today I'll be giving a RAD Responder update on the multi-layer assessment feature. So just as a quick introduction, RAD Responder has designed a customizable multi-layer assessment capability, the features for which will go out in a series of releases over the next coming months. We are in the second release of this series, so this video will demonstrate all the new multi-layer assessment functionalities in RAD Responder that will be released up to this release, which is the 1.60 update. Some key changes to look at is that in 1.60, organizations are now able to configure a custom assessment policy. So this is a change from the existing global assessment policy that organizations were introduced to in the last release. That global assessment policy is not going anywhere. In fact, it'll actually become the default for all organizations. So if you do not choose to configure your own assessment policy, or you opt out to try to keep it as simple as possible, then you'll keep that one-step system. But now organizations do have the option to match their assessment procedures. The new language that was introduced in the last update will stay the same, so you'll see under review, pass review, and failed review instead of approve and reject. One change is the assessment policies page will now be found in the organization space. So you'll go to your organization, and then on the left-hand side menu, all the way to the bottom, is the assessment policies. So the policies that you set up in the organization space will carry over to the event when created. And I will note that you are only able to have one default policy per data type at a time. And just to note here that for this release, we are still keeping all these changes to the field surveys, but you can expect to see these updates to other data types in future iterations. Now, the assessment policies page in the event space is the same, but how to get there is slightly different. So you still want to hit that configuration drop down, and then you'll notice that we have split up the assessment policies and the assessment delegates into two separate tabs. So for the assessment policies page, you can still manage any assessment policies if you have the admin, planner, or assessment manager roles. So when you select the blue manage button, it'll bring you to this configuring delegates and assessments policy page, where you can choose to adopt a different organization's assessment policy, and you can actually do this without choosing a delegate. So in this case, you aren't actually giving anyone any special viewership or any special assessment abilities to your data. You're just running your data through a different policy. You can also adopt or choose one or more delegation organizations. And so when you do this, you're just bringing them on and giving them viewership and assessment abilities as if it was their own data. Now I will be giving a live demonstration from the RAD Responder website. And the first thing I want to show you is the big change for 1.60, which is the fact that you are now able to configure and customize your organization's assessment policy. So we are going to go to the organization side, and then here on the left-hand side menu, I'll scroll down to assessment policies. And you'll see here I have a test policy that is currently the default. And if your organization chooses to opt out of configuring a custom multi-layer, multi-step policy, then I will note that the global policy that has a single step that was introduced in 1.59 will actually become just the default policy, and you shouldn't have to worry about any of this because it mirrors the old way of doing things with approved and reject very similarly. But if you are looking to get a little bit more complex assessment policy, then you are able to set one default per data type, and I will show you how you can customize and configure these assessment policies. So again, we are in the organization side, and that is important just because when you go to create an event, it'll snapshot all the policies that you have implemented on the organization side. So you're going to want to add a policy here, and I'm just going to name this one demo policy. you're able to leave a comment to help differentiate when you're going to use this policy or what exactly the steps are, or whatever your organization wants to say here. And again, this is whatever data point type you want to select. And just as a reminder, with the 1.60 release, we are keeping all of these changes just to field survey, but in future iterations, we'll be adding the other data types. So here's the checkbox for making it default. And I know I said this earlier, but you can only have one default per data type at a time. So when I select this, I'll get a warning just telling me, hey, you are basically deactivating that other default and making this the default. So I'm going to keep that. And with the global policy that we had with 1.59, there was only one step, and that one step was to approve the data. And so what that did was allowed view approved data only partners to be able to view that data. Well, we also have a way to keep the data private to all participants that are outside of your organization, unless this additional step is added. So I'll hopefully be able to explain that a little bit better when I show you how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just select this, and you'll get this error message just saying that the assessment policy requires one step to be defined as visible to full participants on pass review. So as you can see here, the single step is just for data approved is on pass review. So I'm going to say approved data only, and I will add a step, and I will select this visible to full participants on pass review. Full partners. So now the difference between these two steps is this second step here, when it is passed, all full participants in the event will be able to view that data, and the approved data only partners will not be able to see that data unless it is past this step. And I will note that you can change the order of these steps using these arrows right here. So I'm going to go ahead and save these changes. And as you can see in our list of assessment policies, that demo policy that I just created is now the default, and the test policy is no longer the default. So now I want to go to the event space to show you how policy configuration affects the delegation process, as well as how the survey, the data types in general, get processed through the policy. So I'm going to select the event space. And the first thing I want to show you is how the surveys went through the default global assessment policy. So like I said, this is a single step, pass review, fail review. And for this first survey, we do have it being pass review, meaning it is visible both to full participants as well as approved data only partners. This second survey is failed review, meaning it is still visible to full participants, but it is not available for approved data only partners. And then this third survey is pending in assessment status, so it is visible to full participants, but again, not visible to the approved data only partners. And I can expand details. And right here, I can show you that it is, in fact, going through the default system assessment policy, which has that one step. Here it is. I can change whether it's under review, pass review, or failed review. I'm actually going to pull up the map so you guys can see what that looks like on the event map. We did try to match the old way that the assessed data points looked on the event map. So we do have the gray dashed line around the circle here, and that is because that is the one that is still pending in assessment. We have the green line around this data point to show that it is pass review, and then we have the red line with the cross through it to show that that has been failed review. So I'm going to open up this side menu again, and we're going to go to configuration, drop down, and we're going to go to assessment policies. So these are the assessment policies for the event. You can actually filter out to see just your organization or partner organizations as well. You can also filter to see just the defaults or all the options for assessment policies, as well as the data types. So I am looking at just my organization's assessment policies, and you can see that we have the default, which is the one step, as well as the demo policy, which has that extra step that we added to differentiate when exactly we're making that private data visible to full participant partners. So I'm going to go to the assessment delegates, which is underneath configuration, and I'm going to manage, and from here you are able to actually select an organization for the policy. And what this does is you are not giving any organization any special viewing privileges or any special assessment privileges. What you are doing is basically running your data through their policy, and you are able to do this without selecting a delegation, or you can also select one or more delegation organizations. So I'm actually going to run it through the Chainbridge Technologies policy, because that is that demo org policy that we created in the organization space. And I'm going to have my delegation organization be this CBT EM org. And so when I do this, it should reset all of my data that it was already previously assessed, because it is restarting the process. So I'm going to scroll up to data, go to surveys, and as you can see here, it is the statuses that were once past review and failed review are now backed up pending because the policy has changed. So I'm going to expand the details, and you can see where it was once the default policy, it has now been run through the demo policy. So now instead of having just one step, we have two steps. So what I'm going to do is go to the full participant review step and pass review. And then for this next one, I'm going to go to the assessment review, and I am going to give it a pass review. And for this last one, I'm going to give it a failed review and just say wrong unit. So we can see here that for this first survey, I pass reviewed. So now the full participants are able to see it, but the data-only partners are not able to. The approved data-only partners are not able to see it. Whereas the second one, where here I can expand the details to explain this a little bit better. So I went to the assessment review and passed reviewed it. So now approved data-only partners can see this, but full participants cannot. So to change that, I can simply just pass review as well. And now that I have approved both steps, now both approved data-only partners and full participants can see this data point. And now that I have failed review this one, no one is able to see this private data. So one last thing that I did want to point out before ending this live demonstration is that you can always go to configuration, back to the assessment policies, and you are always able to select a policy, and you can either edit it to change the steps, or what you can also do is copy this policy and then create a new one using the old policy kind of as a outline for the new one. So you can actually add more steps here and make this as complex as your organization needs it to be, and you can remove them just as easily. So that's all I had for this 1.60 multi-layer assessment feature update. Please remember to keep checking our resource library. That's where we will be posting these videos and the job aids alongside, just to make sure our end users are up to date as these features are coming out over a series of releases, and we want this to act as a crawl, walk, run progression. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you know to reach out to our support line, which is support@cburnresponder.net. And again, here's a link for our resource library. I appreciate you all taking the time to watch this video, and have a good day.